What you're looking at is an interface for a large 4-foot AM loop antenna. Now, the bottom terminals go to one side is a shield of coax, and the other side is the center conductor. And that comes down and goes to a box. And in the box is variable 9 volts, and you have a pot in there. And there's also a capacitor that takes off the signal from the center conductor of the coax to go to the antenna of the radio. Now, up at the top, the 4 terminals, one of them goes to the outer um, winding of the large coil. And right here, that's yeah, my fingernails are long. Um, it's a varicap, and it's coupled. There's a resistor that goes down to here, which supplies DC up to the varicap, and then it's the signal or the varicap it goes to the center conductor, and the voltage varies the varicap, which is across the outer coil of the large 5-foot diameter antenna. It's a box loop. So when you vary the pot down below, like 50 feet from the antenna, you're tuning the large coil. Now, the center 2 units, the center 2 terminals is a piece of shielded wire, the ground and the hot, but it's got a break in it, so it's a Faraday shield. I'm just going to explain some of this stuff to you. I had drawings, I had diagrams and everything up on my website at one time, and it got me so many idiots. It was an idiot magnet, guys that had PhDs and stuff arguing with me, and I'm like, you know what, I don't need this, so I took it down. There's also ferrite beads in here. Now the ferrite bead allows the DC voltage to go up and change the variactor without bringing noise up into the system. All right, so I figured everything out, and I could sit in my computer room and I could change the frequency of the large box loop. And it's something for you to think about, and look up Faraday shields. Now, Faraday shield, when you see one, it looks like it goes all the way around, but it doesn't. The ends of the chicken wire, the ends of the copper screening don't touch each other. They're insulated, but it looks like they're touching. They're not. If they touch, the no signal will go inside through the Faraday shield and make the radio work. Now, there are people online that worry about these pulse, at the end of the world, nuclear pulses or whatever, and they put their radios inside of garbage cans. A steel garbage can, absolutely. Nothing gets in there. No signal gets in there. But it's not really a Faraday shield. A Faraday shield allows signal, magnetic signal. See, we were taught in school, all right, let me get my hand in focus. Signal, electrostatic, electromagnetic. That's how it travels through the air. It's 90 degrees apart. At one point, the signal is magnetic, and at the other point, it's static. And if you eliminate the static part, you eliminate the man-made noise. So if you take a ferrite rod for an antenna for a radio, and you put it in a Faraday shield, and you want it to be, say the ferrite rod is a little more than 1/4 inch in diameter, and it's long. Don't forget, it's also long. You want the little Faraday shield around it to be about 1 inch square, 1 inch round. There is a circuit on the internet if you dig long enough. It's called a radio magnet, a signal magnet. I think the name is signal magnet. It was a kit. and you would put the ferrite rod inside a piece of PVC pipe, which is plastic, but you would take that aluminum that you use for air conditioning, you know, the double sticky aluminum, and you put it around the tube, and then you cut a slit in it with a razor, and then cut it again, make it about 16th inch wide strip of no aluminum. And that's a Faraday Shield once you ground it to your circuit. But the Faraday Shield works. It lets electromagnetic through, but not electrostatic. And that cut in the aluminum, that keeps it from shorting out, as being a shorted turn. And once you understand some of these concepts, you can go to my level. Now, these two capacitors here, couplings, they're 0.1s. I'll give you some of the ideas. There's a varicap, 2.1s, and then the resistors, something K. Yeah, they'd probably be about 470K. 470K? Yeah, 470K each. There's enough current to make that varicap work. And you got to have the varicap in the right way. So anyway, I put this up. Pictures of this. Actually, I did a drawing of this. And all these drawings, and I got to getting it. Oh, that can't possibly work. And then these guys, one genius after another coming in. And I said, you know, I'm using this antenna. Every day I would turn it. It's 5 foot big PVC pipe. And it's got so many turns. Figure it out. There's a turns calculator if you're building a box loop. And you get the guys that tell you can't possibly work. Then you got the geniuses, the ham radio operators. You should be able to make that as a transmitter. I said, no, you're not with a varicap in there. Well, why not? Well, varicap's good for like 30 volts across it. Whatever. Yeah. When you transmit with a handy talkie, there's a magnetic field around it. It can light a neon bulb. You can burn the front end out of an R71A radio. How the guys arguing that with me? You know how many radios they burnt out the front end of an R71A, and I repaired it? And they would say, well, why does it burn that out? Why? You got a coil in a transmitter, the output coil, and it usually is step up. And it takes 12 volts, and it's an oscillator coil, and with a driver on it. And then if you put a neon bulb near that handy talkie, you'll see it lights up. And when that voltage gets into a FET, it burns the front end of the radio out. It was nothing but annoyances from the people that told me it can't possibly work. And then I was working with this other guy, and he worked on it. He made the similar idea with like 20 times more parts. And I started explaining to him, and then after a while, he wanted to argue with me, and I said, you know what? I just won't answer him back. And but that's what you're looking at right there. And what I built that loop for, when I first moved here, I could get New York stations crystal clear on AM, no noise at all. I used to listen to Rambling with Gambling on I believe it was WOR. I don't know if they changed their call signs. When I was a kid, the grandfather, Rambling with Gambling, was on. He finished up, the father took over, and then the grandson's my age. Well, he was a Republican, and I'm an independent. But what I liked about him, he was pretty fair. He didn't get too politically crazy. This is years ago, though. And he would have Mayor Koch on, I think it was Mayor Koch, and then the other guy. On Fridays, the mayor of New York would be on, and they would take questions from the people in New York. And then Rambling Gambling, what it was is he would just open the paper up and then find something wacky that was happening in New York, and then people would call in and make comments. It was a talk show, but he would also make his comedy routines about some of the stuff that's going on. But I still have the PVC pipe, and I have pictures of it, and I had all that up on the website, and all it did was it was an a-hole magnet for people that wanted to come in and argue with me. At some point, I took that down. I had a bunch of other stuff explaining why this won't work, why that won't work, and I was into CNC, and I was starting to cross over. And this is before YouTube. See, a lot of stuff you have to understand. YouTube wasn't around, cell phones weren't around, and that's why there are still people that wanted to build these things, and now there's no use for them. And if go online and look at a Radio Shack manual and flip through the pages. You can actually do that online. You can click and the page will turn. And notice how many things in that Radio Shack catalog have been replaced indirectly or directly by a cell phone. So when I tell you certain stories, it's because in the old days you couldn't stream a station. And if you want to listen to like Rambling with Gambling in New York, even with a fringe radio, you had a lot of static in the background. So I found out that by building this giant box loop and my circuit with ferrite beads and it was crystal clear, and it pinned the meter. The amount of signal from that box loop pinned the frickin' S meter on the R71A, and all at the same time, I was arguing with people about how they were burning the front ends of the radio out. See, was it the Radio Shack? No, I can't think of the number. Let me look real quick at it. I got back out of bed. I couldn't fall asleep. DX390. All right, people tell you, if you go across the carpet and touch the DX390, the FET in the front end will burn out. Maybe, maybe not. But they hear stuff and they keep repeating it like, you'll burn out the FET. You'll burn out the FET. And that's why I kept telling you I'm slowly weaning myself out of radios, because I don't want to argue anymore. I got tired of arguing with people that don't build nothing. They read and they repeat, read and repeat. I'm a parrot. So anyway, I just wanted to show you this thing. I was laying in bed thinking about it. I should tell them about Faraday Shields and building one. And you can actually put the radio inside it, and it'll pick up the station with less noise. And the whole thing is you can use chicken wire, which is a hardware cloth. Let's call it hardware cloth. 1/2 inch squares, and you wrap it around the radio, but the ends of the if you cut a piece, the ends can't touch, or that makes a loop, and it'll short out. It won't work. And then look for this radio magnet kit, and it's the same thing I did, only it uses I think it used 18 to 25 volts or something to move the variac, and that's so at the magnet, the radio magnet or whatever it was called, there was an amplifier up in there, and then it would send the amplified signal all the way down through the wire, and it was a ferrite rod at one end with an amplifier and would come all the way down. You could buy it as a kit, and then they stopped selling it. Once in a while, you'll see one on eBay. But what the trick is, you have a station, say you want to listen to in Texas. You put this thing up in the attic somewhere away from all electrical noise. Then you run your coax down, and then you turn the ferrite rod so it's facing the station you want to receive. And then down below you turn the knob, and it changes the voltage that goes up to the varicap. It also powers the amplifier board. That's why they use like 15 to 25 volts. My unit, I had a big 5-foot square box antenna. I didn't need any amplification. I was getting enough signal from like 25 feet away. I just needed to vary it now, but I still had to go up and turn the antenna to DX certain stations in certain directions. All right, but it's still during the day I had a piece of tape on the rug, and I knew where to aim my antenna in the other room to get Rambling with Gambling. But he ended up quitting that station, and I took the whole thing down. And then a few months later, he went to a different station in New York, and I couldn't get that without the loop. And then right after that, he decided to retire for good. He didn't have enough of an audience. But I grew up on Rambling with Gambling. And these are emotional anchors. I explained that once before. Uh, if you're picking up a station like WKBW in Buffalo, it started with my father driving in the car, and you hear nothing but static. And I said, "What are you listening to?" He goes, "Station out of Buffalo." And he says, "In the morning it comes in real good." And he had a sister that lived up in Buffalo, so he would hear about the weather and what went on up in Buffalo. So anytime he'd call her to talk to her, he had some conversation he could have with her. But in the afternoon, we'd go to Berger Electronics to get some parts, and the radio would still be on that station. He wouldn't touch it because he was afraid he would lose the station. And then he said that when he would sit at the light, different lights, he could actually hear the relays click, and he knew the light was going to change. Uh, all these things, I actually experienced, or my father would explain it to me, and then, I got into listening to WKBW Buffalo. It's a power station. It's still there. It's 50,000 watts. But most of the radios we had in the house uh, weren't fringe radios. And then I bought this Lafayette radio, and it would get WKBW at night. And my father he was always walking around with that radio. He'd go, "Can I borrow your radio? Can I borrow your radio?" And in later years, I told you about the Radio Shack Fringe. And he would take that whenever my mother and him would go away for the weekend. He'd take that radio, knowing that if they went too far out of the New York area, that fringe radio could pick up the New York stations. Because you go somewhere, and you have to picture back in the old days when you rented a cottage, there was no television in there because they couldn't pick anything up. So my dad would take my fringe radio, and then he could turn it on and get New York stations, even though there were mountains all around. And it's an emotional anchor. I remember him with the radio. Um, I told you originally it was tube radios that I was repairing for people at the lake, and they couldn't get any stations at all. And then someone found out an old Philco could do it, and I figured out why. And then one day I was in the Radio Shack telling someone the story, and the guy goes, "That radio right behind you." "Yeah, that's a long distance radio. That'll work." So I took one home and gave it to my father. I took it into work. Guy took it up to the lake, and it worked. And everybody went to Radio Shack and got one of the radios. And then I never got another repair for an old tube radio that had the extra RF amp in the front end. But like I said, it's emotional anchoring. It doesn't exist anymore. Yes, you can sit there with a radio late at night, and you can DX stuff. If it's got a good front end, it's got the RF, the two coils, the big ferret coil and then the second coil, and they tune together, which is TRF, tuned radio front end. There are TRF radios, but a TRF radio, you have to accept the fact that it's got a tuned radio front end before it goes to the mixer. But there were radios in the old days that they didn't have, they weren't superhets. They called TRFs. And so you can get the two confused. But I just wanted to show you the circuit board, and all it did was cause me aggravation. The one guy says, "Well, I don't see the cut in the wire." I said, "Well, look at this. Look at the drawing of the loop." "Oh, there was a drawing, and there was the cut, and a big arrow pointing to make sure this is cut." It was unbelievable. People are lazy. They assume stuff. They love to fight. They love to have make-believe stuff. I told you I grew up with people, when they couldn't fix something, it was voodoo in the radio. And then I'd fix it. And then the one kid, everything he owned was special. And a lot of the radios in their house and stuff, televisions, they dropped it. It just stopped working. I don't know what happened. It just stopped working. And then I opened up, and there's the broken circuit board. See, what I made a mistake was I should have handed the radio back and go, "It's special. Hang on to it." And then I fixed his turntable, his record player. He dropped that, and I won't go into it, but everything they owned had been dropped multiple times. And the one kid wanted money from his mother, so he'd go around and punch out the walls in the house. You had to see the the inside of the house. But when he got married, or the two of them got married, uh, what they would tell their wives and stuff. And then the wives would actually, during a funeral, they came back to the house and saw how the mother was living. And the one woman just became so depressed she was laying on a couch. And I'm talking to her, and she looks at me and says, "This is nothing like he described." I said, "Oh, they're pretty good, aren't they?" Yeah, they would. I was always helping those two knuckleheads. One of them just died. He owed me a lot of money. He's dead. I'll never get the money. But the other one's an idiot too. But it is what it is. But I have a lot of emotional anchoring with repairing radios for people, arguing with them, and they would make up this stuff in their head. Even with there was a free television channel, movies through the air on 68 UHF. It was called WHT. And this woman starts telling me about it. I didn't know about it. And she says, it's only on Thursday afternoon. I said, how did they make any money? Well, I went home. It was on every night. But when I went over there, I had it decoded. I was watching it. She started arguing with me. It's not on every day. And I was like, you know what? Keep quiet, because they'll want me to build them a decoder. And then the one guy started telling me his friend was getting it for free. He was lived up in it. No, you can't get the audio. You can get the guy talking, trying to get you to buy WHT, but the audio for WHT was actually off of LM 1800. It was right and left channel stereo. When you combine the two channels together through an op amp, it would get rid of the barter. That's what the whole idea of using stereo. They were 90 degrees apart each channel, 180, whatever it was. You put the two channels through an op amp, and the barter, he's basically on FM, just plain FM, not FM stereo. He'd get nulled out, and then the chip would give you a right and left channel stereo, which would then mix in the op amp, and you get the sound for the movie. And so many people were arguing, oh, this is how it works. You got to do this. And the one knucklehead went in the back of his wife's television set, and he turned all the frickin' color knobs and not the convergence board and all that. And I ended up getting that television and repairing it and giving it to someone else who put it next to a potbelly stove and got the picture tube so hot that the grid for the colors inside the picture tube actually warped. And then he says to me, there should be a way to fix that. I'm like, you're a freaking moron. He died early too because he was a freaking moron. Yeah, I like I said, I grew up around some really stupid people, and I didn't do well in school. I'm only good in a few things. And I always tell you, Dirty Harry says, a man has to know his limitations. All right, I think that's it. All right, that's it. Faraday Shield, look it up. Faraday Shield, look it up. Box loop antennas, look it up.